Finally, friends, we see that Christ, priest, who is zealous for God's glory. Let's look at verses 12 through the end. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. And when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things he did, and the children crying out in the temple, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were indignant. And they said to him, "Do you hear what they are saying?" And Jesus said to them, "Yes. Have you never read, out of the mouths of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise?" And leaving them, he went out to the city of Bethany and lodged there. Here our great high priest that we studied last week with Melchizedek. Here our great priest, he goes into that physical temple that represents the real temple. And he throws out the sinners. He throws out the great atrocities of the priest making money in the temple. He throws them out because he's committed to what the temple is supposed to be for, and that is God's glory. It's a place where God and man meet. It's a place where God is glorified. He is the great high priest who comes in and serves faithfully, not only in this temple, but the great temple above. I encourage you to listen to last week's sermon, if you have not, on terms of how he is the great high priest. Here what we need to see is that he's committed to fulfilling Isaiah 56:7. My house shall be called a house of prayer, a place where God is glorified, a place where God and man meet. He knows this is not the real temple, it's only a temporal temple. His body is the real temple. He said, in 3 days this body will be destroyed. This temple will be destroyed, referring to himself, and in 3 days it will rise again. He knows he's the great high priest, the one who serves in the true temple. He desires what we are to desire as our great high priest, and that is nothing but to glorify the Father. No matter how painful that might be. Here it's just awkward confrontation with the leaders. But as we know, he's going to glorify the Father in the coming days by sweating blood, with tears of anguish, by being nailed to a cross, and by dying for us. That's how he glorified the Father. That is great zeal for the God's glory. Our zeal must be the same. Our zeal must be the same. We are now the temple of God. Christ is the head and we are his body. We are a holy temple being built up for his glory. Our zeal must be for the gospel, because the gospel is how we participate and experience the glory of God. If you want to see the face of God, if you want to experience the glory of God, if you want to be like Moses and say, "Let me see your glory," learn the gospel. The gospel is where we see God's glory. The real question is, are we zealous for the gospel? Do we have a zeal for the gospel? Or let's ask a different question. Where is your zeal? What do you have zeal for? What are you zealous for? As I've thought about it, I've come up with 4 possibilities. Maybe it's our wealth. Are we zealous for our money? Are we zealous for more money? Are we zealous for more possessions? Are we zealous for spending all that we have on things of this world and our own entertainment and our own pleasure? How much do you worry about your money? That would give you an indication of how zealous you are for your wealth. Do you sacrifice for your money? Do you sacrifice your family? Do you sacrifice your marriage with time spent away? Do you sacrifice your ethics? Do you sacrifice your times of prayer and study so that you can work more and get more money? Do you sacrifice for your money, or do you sacrificially give your money? Do you look for ways to untie yourself from that enslavement that is a love for possessions? Our wealth is something that is easy to be zealous for. The second one, and you got to hear me out here. This is a hard one. Are you more zealous for your family than you are for the gospel? Are you more zealous for your family unit than you are for the gospel? Now, something that I love about this church is that it has a zeal. Something that attracted me to this church from the first day was a zeal for proper families, a proper headship of husbands and fathers, a proper love from wives, and raising up children well. It's a very important thing, but it's not the most important thing. Your family isn't the gospel. Your family isn't what unites us together as brothers and sisters. Your family isn't what gets you into heaven. Your family doesn't give you forgiveness. Your family is a great, important thing. But the most important thing we always must be focused on is the gospel. I only want to be a good husband and father because of the gospel. I am only a good husband and father if I'm focused on the gospel. The gospel is primary. You see, that's the perversion of our hearts. We take good things. We can so easily elevate them to something more than what they're supposed to be. Friends, let's be committed to the gospel and let that commit us to being better husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, and children. Thirdly, are you zealous for elders? Are you zealous for elder leadership in the church? Do you think elders are going to fix the problems in this church? Elders are going to be helpful. Elders are biblical. But if you have a zeal for elders above your zeal for the gospel, you've misplaced it. The gospel is the only thing that's going to fix anything in this church. The gospel is the only thing that should unite us and build us up and fix us. Yes, let's strive for biblical centrality, for biblical church polity. But let's not think something is going to fix us above the gospel and the grace and the power of Jesus Christ. Finally, are you more zealous about this church's past and the way things have always been? Or are you zealous about the gospel and what we could do? Are you more zealous about what has always happened here? Are you zealous about the power of the gospel, unleashing it here within this body, unleashing it here within the city, and seeing God glorified? Let's not be zealous over our particular opinions. Let us be zealous over gospel-centered truth. Let us long for those things that magnify the gospel and we're focused on the gospel. Let's keep our zeal on the gospel. Friends, I believe we can be a church united in Christ. He is our head. We can come together, be united from all walks of life, all ages, and that will glorify God greatly. But it requires each of us to be committed to one thing above everything else, and it's the gospel of Jesus Christ.